Are you to blame for your child's behaviour? A father's grief consumes him, leaving his children in the wreckage. Journey with me as we explore a father's grief. Follow, like, bookmark. Keep this for later. Ties that bind. Part 1.
The rains had been heavy that season, flooding the streets of the small town and seeping into the cracks and crevices of the modest homes built along the riverbanks. The dampness permeated everything, making mildew bloom in forgotten corners and draughty windows swell and stick in their frames. It was the kind of bone-deep chill no amount of dried chilies and hot tea could drive away. In one such home on the outskirts of town, Rahim sat staring into the crackling fire, lost in memories that burned in his mind even more bitterly than the logs in the hearth. It had been 10 years since that fateful night the fever took his beloved wife, leaving him alone to raise their young son Amir and daughter Aisha. He still remembered her kind eyes and gentle voice as she slipped away, making him promise to care for their children. It was a promise he had failed to keep. The years since her passing had been long and filled with struggle. Rahim worked day and night as a labourer, returning home each evening with calloused hands and stooped shoulders, only to be met with the needs and demands of his growing children. Amir, as the youngest, was petulant and loud. His high-pitched wailing grated on Rahim's nerves after a weary day. The boy wanted constant attention, clinging to Rahim's ankles while he tried to cook their meagre meals. Almost 10 now, he still cried like a babe at the slightest upset. Aisha, on the other hand, was quiet and thoughtful, even from a young age. She would sit contentedly for hours, poring over books borrowed from the local schoolhouse, her kohl-rimmed eyes wide with wonder. Rahim wished Amir could be more like his sister, studious and obedient. Aisha helped care for her brother, scolding him when his antics tried Rahim's patience too far. He was grateful. At least one of his children had some sense. As the years passed, Amir only grew more difficult, as unruly and loud as the seasonal monsoons. Rahim's temper flashed often at the boy, his mind clouded by exhaustion and resentment at the circumstances that had saddled him with 2 motherless children. He had loved his wife dearly. Why had God saw fit to take her when the children were but toddling babes? She should have been there to raise them, to correct them with a mother's firm but gentle hand. Rahim had not the energy nor inclination after each long day, so the boy went unguided, picking up bad habits and insolence. Rahim's scorn was etched harshly on Amir's young face. The boy had tried desperately those first few years to gain his father's approval, tottering after on chubby legs, his arms outstretched. But too often Rahim pushed him away, unable to stand the noise and chaos. Tears would fill Amir's dark eyes, his lower lip trembling, before he would run to bury his face in Aisha's skirts, where she always waited with the silent understanding of an old soul. To Aisha, Rahim gave all the affection and attention Amir craved. She was his solace, the balm for his grief and stress after long days filled with back-breaking work. They would sit together in the evenings as he stroked her hair, recounting stories of her late mother and whispering hopes that one day Aisha would take up her mother's kind mantle. The girl would nod earnestly, promising to study and care for the household. Rahim saw so much of his beloved wife in those large, sympathetic eyes. He wished Amir could exude that same gentle spirit. As months turned to years, the gulf between father and son only grew. Amir's attempts for attention turned to acting out. He refused to do his lessons or help with chores. He would disappear for hours into town, returning with torn clothes and brambles in his wild, unkempt hair. Only Aisha could calm his reckless moods with her patient words. To Rahim, Amir was naught but an extra mouth to feed, an embodiment of the hardship fate had dealt him. Why had God only blessed him with one good, dutiful child when the other flouted his authority at every turn? These brooding thoughts swirled in Rahim's mind as he sat staring into the dying embers that stormy night. The past decade had worn down his spirit as much as his stooped frame. He could almost feel the ghost of his wife beside him, her presence mingling with the wood smoke, full of disappointment at the angry, tired man he had become. He was failing her even now as he failed their son. But the bitterness of Amir's insolence and the pain of betrayal still festered in Rahim's heart. He feared he could never mend the rift with the boy, or be the father his beloved wife wished. The rains continued to fall outside, echoing the tears Rahim no longer had strength to shed.
Thank you for listening. The story is just beginning. Tune to part 2 to find out what happens next.